Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Simply Trade News Roundup. I am here with Lalo and Andy. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Ready for a good weekend.
We're all ready for that. Well, whoever's listening is ready for the week, right? And that should be the same energy because you're going in. It's going to be a great week. You're going to do such good work. You're going to stay compliant and you're going to know what's going on in the world because you're listening to the Simply Trade podcast. So thank you for being here. My name's Annik, and we're going to go ahead and jump into a few articles. First off, since this is an American podcast, we're going to congratulate since I am the host here and I get to decide who we're congratulating. Just kidding. We're going to congratulate all the Olympic athletes. They're doing such an amazing job, especially, watching the gymnastics team yesterday. So awesome. I know it's one of the most, talked about sports, but there's so many others that are doing great. So, yay, go sports.
I think the most greatest achievement that I've seen so far is the U.S. women's sevens rugby team. That was by far the most epic. I know a movie's going to be made out of this. The most epic, the best victory I have ever seen.
Or I did see that yesterday too.
It goes right up there. It goes right up there with the Miracle on Ice for the hockey team. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what they did. It was crazy. They just, the way they won, and literally in 10 seconds left in the game, and they won and they beat Australia. That's their sport. That's their sport. And these women pulled it right off. It was just unbelievable. I just think, if y'all have not seen that clip or that replay, everybody needs to go see it. You're gonna really feel proud to be an American by seeing that. It's like, holy smokes.
I did see that yesterday. I was just at night we watched the Olympics, and I did see. I always scroll through. Well, the first one I watch is gymnastics, just because that's my preference and I know the sport. But then I went through the sports and I saw just the rugby team win. I saw that girl because she's always on TikTok now. She's a tall girl. I don't know. They have been talking about her. I guess she's one of the really good players on the rugby team. And I just saw her screaming and crying. And I think that's when they won. But I don't know rugby that much, so I can't tell you anything. But that's cool. I'll definitely go back and watch that if it was such a big deal. So wow, women have been really progressing this Olympics. Like, I feel like they're really doing something here, which is awesome. And obviously men too, always. But anyways, we got to go talk about trade now. So this is the Trade Olympics today because we have some articles to talk about. The first one going straight into the global digital commerce environment. So there's 80 nations that have struck the deal, but it says that the U.S. has been lacking. Oh my God, I can't talk. They're not really backing it up. So what it is saying is that that 80 nations have successfully negotiated an agreement on regulations governing digital commerce, with key provisions including the recognition of e-signatures, digitizations of custom processes, emphasis on spam control and personal data protection, and support for underdeveloped countries. So in this successfully negotiated agreement, the U.S. has kind of a few issues which have not really been mentioned. And let's talk about it. First of all, what do you guys think of this new agreement? What's your stance on it? Obviously, it seems like a good thing on what I'm reading. Not sure why the U.S. is not backing it, but what is your stance on it? And, how do you think it will proceed?
All right. First off, this is a very good. Well, it's groundbreaking. I don't know how good it is until we get the details on exactly what they're agreeing to. However, getting 80 nations together, or over 80, to agree on something like this is phenomenal. I don't understand why the U.S. is not putting their support there in the article. the U.S. Ambassador there or representative is not giving details as to why the U.S. is not signing on. Now, that said, the types of agreements in this is positive for the import-export community in that these countries would be looking at recognizing digital trade, if you will, digital signatures for customs documentation and for imports and exports and things of that nature. So with that, it's basically, these governments are, shall we say, coming into the 21st century with, I guess, catching up to what's commonplace today in business and has been for quite some time regarding sending emails, recognizing that that's legitimate, a digital signature again, the declarations being electronic versus hard copy paper. So all said and done, we still need to see what it is the details of this. But it appears to be phenomenal in getting that many signing on and agreeing. Second, I say signing on, at least agreeing into up to this point. Second, it would be very interesting, and keep your eyes open on this. What is it specifically that the U.S. is got an issue with? I'm not sure. That's the positive side as far as looking at it. And, the only other side of this, let's talk about the downside of an agreement like this with these types of countries and pulling together. This is getting closer to the potential of governments taxing digital trade more and more. So, governments are looking at ways to increase their revenue. And if they go down this road of taxing digital trade, and they're all in agreement in it, you could be taxed on the export of a transaction and the import of a transaction, all based off of your digital trade. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on. And this is one to keep watching. Thus far, it appears, in my opinion, to be very positive.
The thing I can find, I did a little bit more research, and the only thing I can find on why the U.S. may not be backing this, there are several other articles. I actually did a little bit digging, and there's just some concerns on the U.S. side, mostly because pretty much what you said, Andy, it actually comes down to that, being able to, like, if you get taxed on digital trade, the concerns are also having companies control, large tech companies control how digital data is shared versus giving or losing control at the smaller company level, and so, like, in other words, it wouldn't be a fair playing ground and throughout the the whole sharing of data, let's call it, and so that I know those were some of the concerns that they had. Aligning themselves towards this may actually create issues like that, and so that's what I see. That I found, like you said, Andy, there's very little details as far as like exactly what the rule says. We may need to bring in on the show people that are experts on, like Marianne Roughton, for example. She's really she's a digital commerce. She's president of that group, of that organization, and she may know a lot more about that. And it may be time for us to revisit that and see how that's panning out. In fact, I'll probably reach out for several other reasons, but anyway, so yeah, that's, it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about that.
Moving on to a little bit on a different spectrum, which is the United States has made a decision to delay the implementation of new tariffs on Chinese imports by at least 2 weeks. I don't know. That seems so weird. Like, come on, 2 weeks? We'll just do it now. Which this is just, by the way, this was just me in my head speaking. But this has significant implications for the global trade dynamics. So with this final determination expected in August, which we are in August now, after reviewing public comments, the delay affects a wide range of products from electric vehicles to medical equipment. Yeah, can we talk about this? Like, what do you think? How does this 2-week delay affect companies, and what can they do, or what do they might have to look at now coming with this new with these new tariffs, which I suppose are supposed to protect these businesses, correct?
No, it's to protect some of the U.S. domestic businesses.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. The U.S. businesses.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
but that's one thing. The second thing is to take somewhat punitive action against China, because China is doubling down on the use of the Uyghur forced labor, the Mongolian forced labor. Forced labor in these practices, in the production of harvesting, if you will, aluminum and iron and steel or whatever from the ground, and then create parts thereof and all that. All that's in an effort in the EV world, the electronic vehicle world. There's a lot of forced labor apparently that is used in the manufacture of the China EV vehicles. So that's what's going in now. Apparently, there were 11. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got cut off. I think, does this delay create uncertainty in these trade relationships, or?
No, what it's doing is, the tariffs have not been put in place now on that. So the what's happened is that the Biden administration has expanded. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this in one of the articles, expanded into seafood, I call them plastic pipes, as PVC pipes or PVC material, and the EVs and those things. Now, that's coming to fruition. It was supposed to take effect August 1st. What's happening is, apparently, and according to the article, there were over 1,100 comments people have submitted for the U.S. Trade Office to take under review. And that is a lot in this particular realm. So what they're saying is they're delaying the implementation by 2 weeks so they can get through all of those comments.
It was announced suddenly, I guess, and with regards to raising the tariffs back in, because early July, maybe, or late June, that announcement was made. And so I'm thinking most of these comments, of course, we haven't seen those comments, but I'm thinking those comments were more like, hey, we haven't even had time to prepare for this, and, give us more time, or maybe it's a little bit unfair because now things are going to be more expensive for American consumers because the only place or the best place we can get them are from China, et cetera. I don't know what the reasons are. The article doesn't list that, but I'm just curious to see how that's going to happen. And I'm almost certain, I don't know about you, Andy. I mean, just the way this has happened historically, 2 weeks is going to turn probably into 2 months.
And I guess I should mention that our upcoming course on August 21st, Forced Labor with Emphasis on Supply Chain Tracing, is coming up, and you can still sign up. It's a training plus a workshop, and it's something special. I mean, there's 3 experts that really are going to give you everything they know about this topic, with an emphasis on real topics or real life situation that has happened and how you would respond. So it's really going to train you to, kind of risk control on all of that. Let's move on to the last one, which is one of our favorites, Russia and China, right? Our favorites. And so I'm sure this one is controversial. Russia is moving toward a significant shift in its financial landscape by introducing legislation that would allow foreign banks to open branches within the country. Now, obviously, this line, it was pretty obvious, with restricted access to the global payment system, SWIFT, due to geopolitical tensions. The proposed bill aims to facilitate cross-border settlements by enabling foreign banks to establish a presence in Russia. Of course. I mean, we could have kind of seen this coming, I think. But let's talk about it. How do you think this, I don't even know if the U.S. will participate or what is going to happen. Like, what is your stance on this?
Western banks probably should not. I don't think they can do it, or if they open up a branch. Just keep in mind that the Western banks, as you want to call it, that U.S., UK, the other Western, European banks and all, the sanctions are having an effect on Russia. And Russia is taking steps then to counter this. And so they're saying that they can open up branches to do. What's a bank branch? It's a bank branch is there to do what? To facilitate financial transactions. In this case, what they call settlements. The issue there is then those settlements are a direct result of international transactions where Russia has either selling goods or buying goods. Some of the goods they're selling obviously is the Russian oil, which is the main backbone to a lot of their economy. The second is that buying ammunitions and weapons and things. So the banks that go in that, it'll be interesting to watch and see. Chances are they're going to be banks that are from China, from either Iran and those kind of countries, as well as potentially Saudi Arabia, India, and some of those the BRICS countries. What they're trying to do is find ways to facilitate trade. Case in point, Russia imports a great deal of Chinese vehicles, but Russia was having grave difficulty in actually paying China or the Chinese company, for the vehicles that they were purchasing. Due to the sanctions and all that. So they're looking at ways to try and circumvent that. And if you recall, again, some of the articles we've had in the past on Russia, they're utilizing bartering now. So it's like, all right, I'll take your vehicles. I'll give you so many tankers full of oil or whatever the case is. So many cases of vodka, so many of this, whatever they're, producing. And same thing with Iran and all that with the different transactions.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll keep an eye on it, and maybe we can get someone. I don't know. It would be really fun to get someone specializing, like with Russian relations, which also goes into Russian sanctions, obviously. But just Russian relations are so interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening deal with it possibly in their businesses. But we'll see. Okay, we'll move on from this topic. I have a fun fact for you guys. I don't know if I've mentioned this fun fact. I think I have. But this was a while back, and I think we got some new listeners. And because it's the Olympics, I feel like it really does make sense to mention it, and it shocks me every time I read it. So the largest ship in the world that is used for logistics can actually carry and transport the Eiffel Tower with no problem. And guys, if you have stood next to the Eiffel Tower, if you've stood on the walked up the Eiffel Tower, if you've had dinner on top of the Eiffel Tower, you will know that this does not make sense when you are standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. Like that, it doesn't even register in my mind that is possible. Like imagine just seeing the Eiffel Tower floating along on the sea. Like that is wild. But obviously that will never happen. But
well, these ships that are being built are so massive. That's why some of the cargo ships, cannot go through the Panama Canal because or the Strait of the Suez Strait, because they're so big. They're too big.
Yeah. Wild.
So
wild. Yep. Okay, well, I'm leaving you with that as we're closing out the Olympics. I think they're just one more week and then we're done. So wow. Well, it's been a great one. I feel like I think Paris has done something just very artsy, different, and yeah. So that concludes our episode for today. We will see you back next week with a regular episode. If you have not checked out our last episode, we talked about forced labor with Renee. Renee and I talked about this. It was super interesting. Just went a little in depth of, where forced labor came from and who's affected and what can we do. So go back if you haven't listened yet. And other than that, we wish you a very good week ahead. So see you guys next Monday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.